It was always an open secret throughout the aristocratic class puddings that Meghan Markle's grandiose delusions of remaking herself as a 21st-century Hollywood supernova burned with the intense heat of a dwarf star gone supernova. Even as she continued clawing her way up the unassailable ramparts of the British royal family through ruthless strokes of transatlantic self-branding, whispers circulated of her eyes forever misting towards the siren call of La La Land's Klieg-like glamories. So when the former cable TV actor's global feminista influencer conquest finally culminated in the scorched earth Oprah crucible that obliterated Buckingham Palace's goodwill towards her, perhaps it wasn't surprising that the newly disgraced Duchess immediately pivoted towards the welcoming embrace she assumed the entertainment world would offer. What transpired instead was a harsh reality check shattering the myth of Hollywood as a safe harbor for even the most embattled identitarian icons. Far from red carpeting out the embodiment of 21st-century intersectional perseverance, Tinseltown's powers that be swiftly assembled a united front openly hostile to Markle's entire cultural presence. Within mere months of the former Suits actress being exiled from her royal pied-a-terre, the industry's movers and shakers ensured she was rendered a virtual uncastable pariah throughout every stratum of the Hollywood hierarchy. Some of the earliest tremors manifested through the mysterious scuppering of some of Meghan's most coveted passion projects fresh off the heels of the royal departure cataclysm. Despite direct negotiations appearing all but secured for what was initially pitched as an inspirational memoirist refracting the indomitable feminine through a kaleidoscope of lived marginalizations, all momentum abruptly flatlined behind the scenes of the major book imprints Penguin Random House and Simon & Schuster. Soon even the hungriest independent publishing outfits began issuing hardline rejections, with more than one editor confiding on background that the Duchess's name alone had become akin to branding nuclear fracking waste. On the audiovisual front, representatives confirmed hushed development on a prestige podcast partnership with Spotify floundered into indefinite purgatory when the streaming giant balked at the still exorbitant financial asks required for Markle's ostensible radically truth-telling grandiloquences. Things deteriorated even further when the Duchess began hemorrhaging her most powerful entertainment industry advocates following spectacularly botched meetings over a proposed animated children's series pitch, with allegations swirling that the former royal grew increasingly hostile to any creative input deviating from her own preordained ethnic diaspora visual motifs and woke allegory characterizations. She came to our meetings like someone primed for total cultural megastar domination, and any hint of the usual corporate grooming just enraged her more and more, recounted one traumatized storyboard artist who demanded anonymity. It was like she had already seen herself as the second coming of Walt Disney, but with none of the warmth or commercial storytelling discipline needed to cultivate an actual iconic legacy beyond empty inspirational sloganeering. Alienation calcified into open antagonism over the chaotic rollout of Archetypes, the long-awaited Spotify podcast meant to premiere the Duchess's brand of vulnerable sisterhood intellectualism. What unfolded instead were myriad public relations disasters, from a guest roster viewed as too uniformly narrow and elite to represent Meghan's professed solidarity with marginalized peoples, all the way through her own ungainly hosting cadences that struck many listeners as alarmingly bereft of any self-aware graciousness or poise. Many detected openly hostile racial overtones in online chatter coalescing around the most scathing critiques of the project's pretensions to feminine unification across ethnic and social boundaries. I'm sorry, but does this spoiled glamazon from Compton by way of the county truly expect to be taken seriously while doling out these endless syrupy tropes about what authentically constitutes resilient womanhood? Read one particularly savage listener dissection catalyzing vicious digital pile-ons. Just listening to her hoity-toity struggle/oppression porn cadences makes me feel like I'm having an ancestral spirit finger waved right in my face for committing the sin of never summering in Monaco. By the time the premiere Spotify season concluded to mass editorial shruggings and an abysmal chart performance traditionally marking an outright cultural dismissal, Markle's Hollywood foray had already entered full-blown meltdown thanks to one final grandiose humiliation. This one came courtesy of the highest-profile project she'd attached her name to following the royal exit, serving as a producer and voice actor for a mysteriously ambitious animated reboot of the iconic 60s cult hit, The Archies. Despite the Duchess's unproven media pedigree, the eye-popping budgetary commits from entertainment behemoths like Netflix and Paramount Global confirmed rumors this was intended as nothing less than a flagship crown jewel ushering Meghan into the elite streaming stratosphere. Virtually from its earliest conceptual phases, Archie, the new Riverdale Chronicles, became a flashpoint of toxic culture war animus over its perceived exploitation of wholesome Americana totems as progressive pedagogy vectors. Even before official promos materialized, social media conspiracy theorists and traditional family values watchdogs bombarded the production with accusations it represented a Trojan horse for woke intersectionality dogmas, with Markle singled out as the supposed driving force behind such anticipated departures as pansexual romantic couplings, non-binary characters, and the entire celebrated Archie comics canon being recontextualized through a deconstructionist diaspora lens. These creeps are basically indoctrinating our babies into accepting every form of Western civilizational decay from the rootless liberal freak shows, and it's all just another front in the broader New World Order scheme to dispossess our descendants of any sovereign legacy to inherit beyond vapid pop nihilism and ritualized dysgenia. One traditionalist blogosphere personality railed in a bellwether polemic which set the culture war tenor coursing through the lead-up. As the production rolled through several beleaguered seasons of sustained internet brigading over every controversial artistic decision, Markle herself remained largely absent from the cast list and creative credits beyond some early executive producer listings. This allowed many online detractors to cast her as a conniving puppet master, a subversive catalyst whose mere fingerprints were enough to corrupt a cherished generational American folklore into a race-addled metaphysical battlefield. Just know this soulless grifter's ultimate endgame involves hollowing out every last surviving indigenous signifier of a once cohering national myth system she can get her talons into. One particularly delirious blog rant raged alongside side-by-side image breakdowns highlighting alleged coded ethnic revenge motifs baked into the show's seasonal art direction and character designs. With Archibald now essentially an effeminate black British royal and Betty now a hijab-wearing refugee girl crushing on a tatted-up Latino jughead, the message is clear: they're obliterating the entire visual vocabulary of Anglo-Christian patrimony to linguistically overwrite the spirits of our impressionable youth. By the time Archie, the new Riverdale Chronicles, sputtered to a third season cancellation once its inaugural streaming figures failed to reach renewability thresholds, the verdict was rendered beyond refutation. Hollywood had spoken, and Meghan Markle was resoundingly rebuked from ever claiming a seat among its top tables of power. In the aftermath's scorched rubble, the Duchess now found herself more ostracized than ever from both aristocratic and pop cultural dominions, her entire personal brand reduced to international punchlines about identitarian messianism's most solipsistic follies. Acrimoniously frozen out of the transcendent entertainment deification she'd envisioned, the former royal rebel was faced with a cold reality, like the old Shakespearean portrayals of tragic heroes hoisted by the fatally flawed petards of their own vanities. Her desperate gambit for 21st century iconic validation status only calcified suspicions that she was never anything more than a perpetual cosplayer bedecked in borrowed identities. Stranded on the outskirts of her chosen promised lands, the Duchess had achieved such thorough alienation from her grandest aspirational ambitions that even the specter of ever clawing back a redemptive narrative seemed faint at best.